I'm gonna be honest, I didn't want to do that. The Vandy and the Navy. It just feels wrong. For some reason, pointing and laughing at Vandy and Navy. Anchors down, I guess, in both cases, though, as both lost yesterday. Welcome to the Your Season is Over college football recap video, Week 9 edition, the only Sunday afternoon college football recap video that actually matters, right here on YouTube every Sunday afternoon. And before we get to the point and laugh segment of the show, which is why the majority of you are here, I just have to say, am I the only one that feels a little disappointed in yesterday's college football? Especially in terms of a Your Season is Over video perspective. There wasn't a lot of funny outcomes yesterday, really. We're going to go through the list, but I mean, there wasn't like really the major upset that we have seen in several weeks past. Texas came close to losing to Vandy, but they won. Ohio State came close to losing to Nebraska, but they won. Even sort of the game, or this, well, I was about to say game of the year, this week's version of the game of the year, which we have one every week, and we're going to continue to have one every week. But this year's version of that, Texas A&M and LSU. It was close in the first half. It was a good game in the first half. Second half, just complete domination by Texas A&M. It wasn't, I mean, I won't say it wasn't worth watching. I watched it. It was an entertaining game, but we didn't get the close or dramatic finish. It just, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I'll admit I was extremely tired yesterday. My schedule got a little upended. Anyway, none of that matters. It felt a little, yesterday's slate overall felt a little disappointing. And I'm not talking about beforehand when you look at the list of games and you go, oh, there's no good games. I don't ever look at a week that way because a lot of times in those weeks where you look at the schedule and it looks like there's no great games, those end up being some of the best weeks of all. So it's not that. I mean, now that now that Week 9 is over and you look back, it's just, I don't know. It feels like a little bit of a letdown, I guess, maybe compared to several of the weeks that have come before it. But anyway, we're going to go through the list of losers per normal. We'll do the point and laugh. I've got an updated Heisman list for you. I've got an updated We're Back list for you. I've got the best teams I saw play football this weekend. We've, of course, got the Josh Pate special. And then I got something extra at the end. And to be honest with you, I may run through some of the point and laugh stuff a little quicker than normal for the reasons I just stated. There's not a lot of funny losses yesterday, honestly. And I've got something I want to do at the end here, which is going to take some amount of time. I've got basically a playoff eliminator thing I want to go through with you. I've got a list of every single team in the country that's got 0 losses. I've got a list of every single team in the country that's got 1 loss. And I've got a list of every single team in the country that's got 2 losses. Or at least most of the teams that have 2 losses. Some are just not getting into the playoffs, obviously, so I kind of left those off the list. But anyway, I've got a list of 28 teams here that I think the playoffs are now narrowed down to. And I'm going to scratch a couple of additional names off of this list of 28 with your help at the end of the video. But let's start with the point and laugh. I guess we'll just start at the top and work the ways down per normal. LSU. This is one I got wrong yesterday. I had been impressed with what I had seen from LSU over the last few weeks. That win against Ole Miss, and then to turn around really and get a pretty good win last week too on the road. I thought they were more ready for this game than Texas A&M was. I knew it was at home for Texas A&M, and that worried me a little, but I thought LSU and Garrett Nussmeier would outduel Texas A&M, and I clearly was wrong. This game got out of hand in the second half. And of course, LSU ends up winning the game 38-23. LSU now 6-2. Texas A&M 7-1. 7-1. No SEC losses. So Texas A&M, we're almost in November. Texas A&M is in sole first place in the SEC. Oh boy. Oh boy. Nobody had that on their bingo card in August. Nobody had Texas A&M as being in sole possession of first place in November. Now, will it finished that way. We're going to talk about that when we get to some of these playoff scenarios at the end. But a big win for them yesterday, 38-23. They switched quarterbacks, or did they? Connor Wegman, of course, quarterback for Texas A&M, played okay, not great by any means in the first half of that game. And obviously, LSU was up at halftime. And they made a change in the second half, and they brought in this other guy, Reed, and he could run. He's very athletic. He's very mobile. He can dance around in the pocket. He can extend plays. He can take off running down the field for your first down or even a home run touchdown. And he did all of that in the second half. And it was pretty obvious that they caught LSU off guard with that. Now, I've seen, and this is nothing unusual, but I've seen a ton of overreaction to how he played in this game. Did he play well? Yes, he did. Is he a totally, 180-degree turn difference in quarterback style than Connor Wegman? Yes, 100%. And he caught Brian Kelly and LSU napping from a coaching perspective in the second half. They were unable to adjust and make the changes they needed to defensively to contain him. All of that is true. It's also true that he completed 2 passes. Not on his first drive, not on his last drive, not on a touchdown drive, the entire game. He completed 2 passes. Now, I'm not here to tell you that means he was 2 of 2. So, on one hand, yeah, he only completed 2 passes. On the other hand, he had a 100% completion rate. I know. Look, I'm not knocking him at all. But what I am saying is there's a difference between sort of catching a team off guard, making a quarterback change like that to somebody with a totally different style, and then letting him just run around for 2 quarters, versus playing that quarterback for an entire game against a team that maybe knows it's coming. That's all I'm saying. And again, that's not to say that means Texas A&M can't win games with that guy at quarterback. Clearly they can. They've got a really good defense. They run the ball, which is something LSU needs to try to rediscover. LSU running the ball is horrendous. I don't even remember if I wrote this down, but their rushing total was beyond pathetic. Please tell me I wrote this down. Shit, I didn't. But what did LSU have? 20-something yards? They just didn't run the ball at all. Just terrible on the ground for LSU. And if you want to point to sort of some reasons LSU lost this game, well, there was, again, some coaching and special teams issues, which I blame on Brian Kelly. There was LSU's inability to run the ball. And there was LSU's inability defensively to adjust in the second half to the changes that Texas A&M made offensively, particularly at the quarterback position. And again, get back to the quarterback. He played really well. I don't want anybody to misunderstand what I'm saying about that quarterback. He played really, really good. But I think everybody understands that there is a huge difference between coming in as sort of a surprise in the second half of a game as a very young and unexperienced quarterback. And look, let's give him credit for that too. He didn't make any boneheaded mistakes when he came in. And to show up at that game, at that time, in that environment, I know it was a home game, but they were going nuts there. The pressure had to be immense on him, right? And he performed at an extremely high level. My only point is there's a difference between what he did yesterday and what he might do if he's the starter going forward. And I don't know that he will be the starter going forward. I've seen a lot of reaction like, oh, that's it for Connor Wegman. He needs to hit the portal. He's done. He's gone. Maybe. We'll see. I don't know what Texas A&M is going to do. I have no idea. And I'll be surprised if they announce it before next Saturday. It'd be dumb to do that. I'm sure they'll tell Wegman and Reed whatever it is that's going to go on. But in terms of letting all the other teams know what they're going to do, why would you do that? And if, at the very least, Texas A&M has now put every team they play from now to the rest of the season into a scenario where defensively they've got to prepare for not just 2 different QBs, but 2 total different styles of quarterback, which means 2 totally different styles of offense potentially that we could see from Texas A&M going forward, because Wegman is more of a drop back passer. Whereas this guy, Reed, is going to run around and make a lot of plays with his legs, whether that's extending plays and throwing on the run outside the pocket. Again, we didn't see a lot of that from him yesterday, 2 of 2. But he did it enough, and then the running around stuff. So Texas A&M, they're in the driver's seat in the SEC. I don't know any other way to say it. They don't have to play Georgia. They don't have to play Tennessee. They don't have to play Bama. They've already played Ole Miss and beat them. And they've already... No, they didn't play Ole Miss, did they? Anyway, their only loss is to Notre Dame. And when you look at their remaining schedule, here it is for Texas A&M. Now, of course, everybody is aware of the big game coming up at the end of the year between Texas A&M and Texas. And there's a very high likelihood at this point right now that game, the winner will go on to the SEC championship game. It's not a lock. It's not a guarantee. We've got a month of football left. But when you start looking at who's got how many losses and who owns tiebreakers over who because they beat them and things like that, it looks like we are headed for a situation where the first Texas A&M game, the last week of the regular season, rivalry weekend, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, could literally be for all the marbles in terms of win and you're in the SEC championship game, losing you're not. But here's Texas A&M's remaining schedule outside of that. They play on the road at South Carolina. They play home against New Mexico State. They play on the road at Auburn and then home against Texas. They're going to beat New Mexico State. I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb here and give them a win against Auburn. Those are two pretty close to guaranteed wins there. That leaves 2 games for Texas A&M. One coming up here, their next game at South Carolina. That's not going to be easy. I know what South Carolina's record is. I know they're not a great overall team, but we have seen South Carolina play some good teams really tough this year. Some they've come out on top. Some they've come up a little short. That's not a game that Texas A&M can just walk into and you just roll your helmet out there and it's an automatic W. Now, Texas A&M has owned South Carolina during their time in the SEC. They have played every single year going back to whatever it is, 2012 or 13, and South Carolina's only beat them one time. Texas A&M appears to be a better team than South Carolina. There's no question about it, but it's in South Carolina at Williams-Brice. And South Carolina has proven to be a capable team at times, especially defensively along that front. I'll tell you, if they play that Reed guy at quarterback, Texas A&M against South Carolina, it'll be interesting to see how South Carolina's front 7 deals with him versus how they would do against Connor Wegman, who is more of a sort of sitting up target in the pocket, whereas the Reed guy can run around. Texas A&M will be favored and will likely win the game, but that's definitely their second toughest game remaining. And then they, of course, have the regular season finale, which is a home game against Texas. And again, I can't reiterate how huge that game is going to be. I made a video in the offseason about the games I'm looking forward to the most in 2024. And number 1 on the list was Texas versus Texas A&M. I took some heat for that. And I even admitted in the video when I talked about that game being the game that I'm looking forward to the most, the reason I was looking forward to it the most was not because I thought it would be some sort of huge end-of-year matchup to determine SEC championship or playoff seeding or implications, but just simply because of the fact that it's a huge rivalry that we haven't seen in 15 years because Texas A&M joined the SEC and people got their feelings hurt and Texas A&M quit scheduling games. And I'm just really excited to see what was during my childhood one of the biggest rivalries in all of college football, Texas and Texas A&M. I'm glad to have that game back. Well, now I still have all that going for me. And it is going to be a huge matchup in terms of SEC title game and playoff seeding and everything like that. So it just doesn't get any bigger than what we're going to see in that Texas A&M game, which again is a home game for Texas A&M. So I say all that to say this: Texas A&M's got a very favorable schedule in terms of making the playoffs. Let's say they beat South Carolina. Let's say they beat Auburn and they beat New Mexico State. They go into that game against Texas, and let's even say they lose for some reason, okay? Let's even say they lose. Well, if they lose, they're probably not going to the SEC title game. That would probably then be Texas and the winner of the Georgia-Tennessee game probably, right? But they would still get in the playoffs. Texas A&M would at 10-2. So it's almost impossible to find a scenario right now that doesn't involve Texas A&M making the playoffs. They would have to lose 2 of their remaining 4 games, most likely, in order to not make the playoffs. And I don't think that would happen. They'd have to lose to South Carolina and Texas, or there would have to be a major upset against somebody like Auburn. So Texas A&M is in a good spot, but LSU, the exact opposite is true for you, Buddy Rowe. You just toted your second L. That loss to Southern Cal may really come back to bite LSU in the butt for real. They're off this week, LSU is, but then they play Alabama at home in a for real playoff elimination game. No doubts, no questions. We've talked about some games up to this point that could potentially be playoff elimination games. This is a playoff elimination game not this coming week. Both teams are on a bye, LSU and Bama. But the week after that, probably at night in Death Valley. Alabama has to go into Baton Rouge. Both teams are going to have 2 losses. LSU's got the 1 conference loss that they just toted, that they just toted to Texas A&M. Plus, they lost way back in week 1 to a bad Southern Cal team. Alabama has losses to Vandy and Tennessee. That's 2 conference losses for Bama. If Bama loses this game to LSU, that would be their 3rd loss overall and their 3rd conference loss. They're out of the playoffs. It's that simple. It's that simple. If LSU loses, it would only be their 2nd conference loss. But Alabama would still have 2 conference losses, but Alabama would then hold a tie over LSU in terms of trying to get to the SEC title game. Texas A&M would hold a tie over LSU if it came to that in terms of getting into the SEC title game. And LSU would have to bank on the fact that there were no 1-loss SEC title contenders, and that just wouldn't happen. And a 3-loss LSU during the regular season would have lost to Southern Cal, ain't getting in. So it is legitimately going to be a huge game out LSU and Bama coming up in a couple of weeks. But LSU, you lost yesterday, so for purposes of this video, your season is over. All right, let's move on to Florida State. Oh my God, they lost again. This isn't going to take long. It's seriously getting to the point with Florida State now. I'm not lying. Well, let me just go ahead. The final score ended up being Miami. Now look, I guess you want to give Florida State a little bit of credit. Here's a couple of things. The game was kind of close at halftime. And then even in the 4th quarter when Miami had pulled away and it looked like a blowout, Florida State didn't give up. They went down and scored a garbage time touchdown. So maybe you want to give them a little bit of credit for that. Although I don't know why you would. Where is it? Florida State. I know it's on there. Am I looking over it? How in the hell am I, here it is. Sorry. Miami 36-14. They beat Florida State. Florida State played 2 quarterbacks again. Look, I know your starter is hurt, the ukulele and that, but let's be real. Even if he wasn't hurt, he's just terrible. So you needed to find another answer at QB. But it's another blemish to me on Mike Norvell that you're in week 9 against your biggest rival, Miami, and you don't know who the fuck your quarterback is. You continue to play multiple quarterbacks every single game. None of them are any good. They all turn the ball over. The offense is just non-existent and atrocious. I don't know what they're going to do. My guess is that they're not going to do anything and that Mike Norvell is going to be the coach again next year with a rebuilt roster from the portal. Fingers crossed that it works. It probably won't. I mean, this is his 5th year. I can't reiterate that enough when it comes to Mike Norvell. There's not a narrative, but a feeling when you talk about Florida State that, because they were really good last year and now this is a down year, it gets overlooked in my mind that this is his 5th fucking year. There shouldn't be a year like this in year 5 at any major program in the country, period. Period. This is going to be his 3rd losing season in 5 years. Okay? So maybe you want to make excuses for the first 2 if you want to say he inherited a bad situation. Well, if you're 1-7 right now, you've now created your own bad situation. Who are you blaming it on now? They're in bad shape. The recruiting class is falling apart. I don't know what hope they have. Now, this is whatever they gave them an extension last year for no reason. So they can't really afford the buyout. Plus, they're paying lawyers' fees out the wazoo because they're suing everybody under the sun. It's just everything about Florida State is a complete and fucking total disaster. The department is a disaster, suing everybody, suing the ACC, suing their own conference, suing ESPN and their TV partners and the TV channels and the TV networks, the product they're putting on the field, the quarterback situation, ukulele, you go get him from the portal. He's fucking garbage. Halfway through the season, you start playing QB2, then QB3, then QB4. Now we're in week 9. Your biggest rivalry game comes up. You're rotating quarterbacks in and out. It's a fucking disaster and the fans are the lowest of the low. There's not a single positive thing about Florida State football right now. Nothing. The team this year, terrible. The coach, terrible. The staff, terrible. The recruiting class falling apart. The younger players on the team that'll likely be coming back next year, not any good. Just absolutely horrible. Everything about them. Oregon beat Illinois 38-9. Here you go right here. Illinois. There's something weird going on with Oregon right now. I guess we'll point. You want to point and laugh at Illinois? Why? Okay. 38-9. Oregon improves to 8-0. Illinois to 6-2. Dylan Gabriel, 18 of 26, 291 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just another walk in the park for Dylan Gabriel, probable Heisman finalist at this point. Oregon's got at Michigan coming up, then Maryland at home, Wisconsin on the road, Washington at home. Oregon's going 12-0. There's something weird going on. Illinois season is over. They've got 2 losses. We'll talk about them at the end. They're on the list of teams with 2 losses. There's something weird going on with Oregon. And it's got nothing to do with Oregon. You look around the country right now, and there's a feeling amongst fans, and I don't know if this is accurate, real, true. We'll find out as we move into November and the postseason starts in December. But there's this sort of talking point or this narrative going around that there's no good teams in football this year, or there's no great teams, or there's no elite teams. I don't know that that's true. I don't know that that's true. Some of the things that are helping push this narrative along, Alabama is not the team that we're used to seeing them be. And Georgia lost to that team. Texas, who everybody thought was unbeatable, then lost to the team, Georgia, that lost to the team, Bama, that is clearly not nearly as good as they used to be. That has a lot to do with it, this narrative that's being pushed that there aren't any good teams, okay? Tennessee, who has looked good at times and only has 1 loss, the loss is to who? Arkansas, a team that's not very good. Ole Miss, a team that people thought would be in the postseason, gets basically beaten by Kentucky and then beat again. 2 losses already. You go up to the Big Ten. Ohio State, supposed to be the best roster in all of football. They go to Oregon, lose. They barely beat Nebraska. Haven't really looked great at any point this season. Don't run the ball very good. Offensive line questions. Michigan won the national title last year. Now they can't win a game. Washington, who Michigan beat in the national title game last year, has a 500 record. So all of that is true. All of that is true. I'm not sure all of that means that there's not any good teams. And the team that is suffering the most from that narrative is Oregon. If you want to still talk to me about the Oregon versus Idaho game, which was played in August, wasn't that played the end of August, way back in week 1? Okay. Do you really think that, like, that's Oregon? We're in week 10. You can't keep talking about Oregon and the first thing you mention is, well, they kind of struggled with Idaho. In week 1, 2 months ago. And the Boise State thing, forget about that. Boise State's a good team. Oregon beat them by whatever it was, 3, 10, whatever, something like that. Boise State's a decent team, but those were Oregon's first 2 games, okay? If Oregon played Boise State right now, they'd beat them by 3 touchdowns or more. Oregon is a great team. Quit lumping Oregon in with your notions of what other teams are. Whatever Alabama is or isn't, whatever Alabama has or hasn't done, that ain't got nothing to do with Oregon. Have you watched them? And Oregon might not be the only great team. Anyway, Illinois lost. I don't even know why I got off on that. But Oregon beats Ohio State at home. They turn around the following week on a short week. They have to go on the road in conference on a Friday night, which is a very dangerous. Do you pay any attention at all to college football? Do you know how many times a road favorite loses on a short week, Thursday, Friday night game? Loses a game they got no business. It happens a lot. Oregon beats Purdue 35-0 2 weeks ago. Come back home, host a ranked Illinois. 1 loss, Illinois. 1 loss. Absolutely destroyed them. Absolutely destroyed them. If you've got a ranking or a poll or anything else that doesn't have Oregon as number 1 in it, you're an absolute retard and you've got no business talking, discussing, or typing about college football. Does that mean Oregon will win the national title? No. That's why we have a postseason and a playoff, okay? But right now, 100% your number 1 team should be Oregon. Who's next? Missouri. Missouri's not very good. They weren't very good in the preseason, the offseason. They weren't very good in week 1. They weren't very good in week 2, week 3, week 4. But there's not a week that Missouri's been very good. They're not a top 25 team. They're definitely not a top 10 team. I've been beating this drum for 5 weeks when it comes to Missouri. Okay, they're not very good. Missouri was probably, other than Florida State, Missouri might have been the most overrated team in the offseason, other than Florida State. It's hard to believe, but Florida State was in everybody's top 15 in the preseason. Some dummies had them in the top 10. Michigan too. But Missouri is fool's gold. Missouri is fool's gold. And more on this when we get to the end of the video where I talk about 0-loss teams, 1-loss teams, and 2-loss teams and trying to scratch some off the list. But I wrote this down because that's how unbelievable it is. Well, it's not unbelievable to me. Missouri lost to Bama, by the way. They got shut out. Bama won 34-0. Bama had no turnovers. Missouri had 3. Story of the game. Bama now 6-2. Missouri now 6-2. So you're going, what? Well, he's shitting all over Missouri. The same record as Bama. Okay, that's true. They do have the same record as Bama. You know what the problem is? Missouri's played 2 ranked teams. 2. They ain't played but 2 ranked teams. I guess 3 if you count Vandy, who they beat. But Vandy won't be ranked anymore. They were 25th last week. They lost. They'll be out. We'll cry about it. Anyway, they've played 2 ranked teams, Missouri has. Bama and Texas A&M. The combined score in those 2 games is like 80-10. Missouri scored 10 total points, 10 against Texas A&M, 0 against Bama, and they gave up about 80 points combined. Missouri's not a very good team, and they're not a playoff team. I don't care if Missouri wins the rest of their games. They still won't get into playoffs because they don't have any ranked teams left on their schedule, and the narrative is what it is. You played 2 ranked teams, and you lost 80-10 combined about to those 2. So again, you look down at Missouri's, did I even write down Missouri's schedule? No. They might win them all, the rest of their games. It won't matter. 10-2, Missouri's not getting in. They don't have any ranked teams left on their schedule. They've played 2 ranked teams, lost 80-10. Missouri, your season is over. Bama, defensively, looked amazing. Shout out head coach Malachi Moore, the only player/head coach in all of college football, the only player/head coach in the history of college football that I'm aware of, had an interception in yesterday's game, and the Bama defense completely shut Missouri down. Now, you can talk about the quarterback and, Brady Cook went out in the second quarter and they had to play Drew Pine, and Drew Pine was an interception machine. Yeah, that's true. But how many points did you have again in the first half with Brady Cook? I can't remember. Oh, yeah, 0. This game was never in doubt. Alabama ran it down their throat. Yesterday's version of Alabama is the version of Alabama I thought I was going to see every single week this year. And if you go back and listen or watch any video I made discussing Alabama in the offseason, I said the same things over and over and over and over and over again. Milroe's not a pocket passing QB. Bama's got a big offensive line and 2 really good running backs. Bama should run the ball down people's throat until they make them stop, and then a couple of bombs here and there. That would be the best version of Bama. And that's what they did yesterday. They lined up, and they ran it down Missouri's throat with Justice Haynes, J.M. Miller, Jalen Milroe, and there was nothing Missouri could do. And Bama looked really good. Now, the problem is Bama's looked really good before. They've just been very inconsistent. If Bama sticks to that version of themselves, I think they will be a difficult out for anybody they play, because the reality is, as bad as Bama has looked at times this season, and they have looked really bad at times, second half against Georgia, the entire Vandy game, the entire South Carolina game, most of the Tennessee game, as bad as they've looked at times, they are still one of, if not the most talented rosters in all of college football. And if they just line up and say, we're going to run it, what are you going to do about it? Most teams aren't going to be able to do anything about it at all. And if the defense on top of that steps up and plays like they did yesterday, they're dangerous and they win a lot of games. So they've got 2 losses. They've got a difficult schedule ahead of them, but they could still potentially get in. They're going to have to, of course, beat LSU on the road in 2 weeks. They play Auburn at the end of the year. They've got a game against Oklahoma. All of those games look extremely winnable, with the exception of the LSU game, which I think could be close, but it's at LSU. We'll see. We'll just have to see on that. We'll just have to see on that, in that, and also in 2. But Missouri, I'm done with you. Oklahoma, I've been done with you for a while. You're falling into Florida State territory, aren't you, Oklahoma, man? Yeah, you are. Who beat you yesterday? Great question. Ole Miss did. Ole Miss beat you yesterday. I might not have even bothered writing it down. That's how bad you are. Ole Miss won 26-14. Oklahoma's a disaster. This whole thing, well, you know, they're without their top 5 wide receivers. What, are they getting a plane crash? How are you without your top 5 wide receivers for half the fucking season? Your quarterback situation is a disaster. Your offensive line isn't any good. Your offensive coordinator isn't any good. And similar to Florida State, it's hard to see what Oklahoma's plan is going forward in terms of next year to try and turn it around. You're going to lose Jackson Arnold. I think that's just about a guarantee. And before you tell me you don't need him, well, if you don't need him, then why are you still playing him every week? Every week with Oklahoma, just like with Florida State, it's this quarterback, it's that quarterback. Well, he's not doing good. Try the other one. Well, that one did bad too. Well, put the other one in again. 3rd time's a charm. Back and forth, back and forth. You're liable to lose both of them. You might lose both of them. The offensive line is bad. The recruiting has been good, but where's the results on the field? I mean, recruiting is great in year 1 and 2 to prop yourself up, but time you get to year 3, now, those recruits are supposed to be playing and contributing and doing something on the field on Saturdays. Where are they? Where are they? And if you think your schedule's tough this year, which it is, then you might want to look at your schedule for next year. It's exactly the same. Your conference schedule is. I don't know about your non-con. It's probably a little different. But every SEC team's conference schedule is the same next year as it is this year. It's just flip-flop the home and away games. So, for example, you got the privilege of losing at home this year to Tennessee and South Carolina. Next year, you get the privilege of losing to them on the road. It's the same, but it's the same schedule. So the results will likely be similar because it looks like you're going to be starting a new quarterback again next year behind an offensive line that's going to have a bunch of question marks again next year. What's wrong with how do you have 5 starting wide receivers that are hurt? A lot of questions. A lot of questions. Let me ask you this. Is there any chance that some or all of those wide receivers aren't hurt and they're redshirting? Any chance of that? I'm not accusing them of that because I haven't heard that. There's just a lot of that going around. Florida State's got a guy that's not playing because he has a bruised palm. I'm not making that up either. Google it. Bruised palm. Now, at Florida State, it's not a surprise that you may end up having a bunch of players sit out the last month of the season with some kind of made-up injury because Florida State has spent the last 10 months purposely cultivating and creating an atmosphere in which quitting is okay and, in fact, encouraged by not only the team itself and their coaches, but by the fans. The Florida State fans love it when the players quit and don't play. So you're going to see a lot of that at Florida State in the month of November. A lot of bruised palms coming up in Florida State in terms of their players who don't want to get hurt 3 weeks before they enter the portal, which is what they're planning to do. And there might be some of that going on at Oklahoma. Don't know. But Oklahoma, you're absolute dog shit. You're absolute dog shit. Hey, you got some time to kill today? Not the Oklahoma fans. They don't want to do this. Trust me. But trust me when I tell you the Oklahoma fans do not want to do what I'm about to tell you to do. By you, I mean those of you watching that aren't Oklahoma fans. You got some time to kill today? You want some entertainment? Want a good laugh? Go back to the video called Oklahoma 2024 Game-by-Game Prediction by Uncle Lou or whatever. Go back to that video. You don't have to watch it. Whether you watched it or not or what, it doesn't matter. You don't have to watch it. Just read through the comments. Just read through the comments. I think I had Oklahoma at 7-5. Boy, those Oklahoma fans, they're probably running over there now to delete their comments. I'm an idiot. I've never seen an Oklahoma game. Oklahoma's going 10-2 at worst. Oklahoma's making the playoffs. Oklahoma's a contender for the SEC championship. No way they lose more than one game. Well, and that's on a video where I had you at 7-5. Have you come to the realization yet that you were kind of right and I was kind of wrong? Because you're not going 7-5. You were right. And I was wrong. You're going 5-7. You're not even making a bowl game. Can you believe that there's a serious possibility that Florida State, Oklahoma, and Southern Cal and Michigan all miss a bowl game in the same year. And Nebraska and Colorado make a bowl game. I'm just going to let that sit there and marinate for a second. Wooden wagon wheeled motherfuckers. Damn, y'all are dumb. Big dumb. But Oklahoma, you lost again. So did Wisconsin, but they gave a valiant effort, I thought, at least for the majority of the game. They did end up losing at home to Penn State, who remains undefeated. And the final score of that one was 28-13. Wisconsin lost, Penn State won. Wisconsin eliminated from anything meaningful. Penn State remains undefeated ahead of their showdown coming up this weekend with Ohio State. But that's not the story. Dew Aller got hurt here. Penn State's got to get this guy back. Now, I looked high and low this morning, and I can't find any legitimate, real, meaningful Dew Aller update in terms of the injury. He got injured. He went to the locker room. He did come back out on the sideline, but he had a knee brace on, no helmet, never went back in. Now, the guy they put in for him, he did okay. I don't remember if I wrote the numbers down. Yeah, he was 11 of 13 for 98 yards. So the guy didn't do bad, but that's against Wisconsin, not Ohio State. You need Dew Aller back. And as a college football fan who doesn't care one way or the other who wins or loses that game, I hope Dew Aller comes back, because when we see these massive monster games of the century that we see every week, that's the next week's version. I want every healthy player available. I mean, everybody does. I want to see the best of what both of these teams have to offer when they square off next week at Penn State. And don't know if we're going to get that with our boy Dew Aller. But here's Penn State's remaining schedule. Keep in mind they are undefeated. They host Ohio State. They then play Washington at home, at Purdue, at Minnesota, home against Maryland. This team is in serious trouble. Ohio State is in serious trouble. Let's play it. We're going to play out. Let's say Penn State wins next week. Let's say Penn State wins next week. Penn State's not losing any of those other games. Maryland, Minnesota, whatever the fuck was on there. If Penn State gets past Ohio State, they're going 12-0. I already told you what Oregon's schedule is. They're not losing either. If Penn State beats Ohio State, that'll be Ohio State's second loss, and they will have a grand total of 0 wins against ranked teams. They are in serious trouble of missing the playoff. Forget the Big Ten and, well, we got to beat Michigan and beat the Big Ten and $20 million roster. If they lose to Penn State, they're in serious danger of not making the playoffs. And that's not even the worst part. Even if they beat Penn State, they got to play Indiana the week before they play Michigan. So if you're a betting individual, it doesn't really matter. Well, I won't say it doesn't matter. It matters. Who do you think is better, in other words, between Indiana, Ohio State, and Penn State? I'm leaving Oregon out because they've already beat one of those three, Ohio State. So I'm leaving them out for now. You have to ask them, who's better, Ohio State, Penn State, or Indiana? Okay, that's part of the equation in terms of figuring out who might make the Big Ten title game to play probably Oregon, right? That's part of the equation. But just like we've talked about every week, another part of the equation is, what does Ohio State have left on their schedule versus Indiana and Penn State and what they have left on their schedule? Because if you've got, in other words, the team with the harder schedule is less likely to get through it. than the team with the easier schedule. So you take Penn State. I just rattled it off to you. Forget the Penn State-Ohio State game coming up this weekend for a second. Just forget that game for a second. Penn State coming up has Ohio State and then Washington, Purdue, Minnesota, and Maryland. They're winning all of those. They're winning all of those. So if Ohio State loses, they're not making the Big Ten title game. And even if they beat Indiana, I don't know if that'd be enough to get them in. They'd be 10-2, sitting at home watching the Big Ten title game. Ohio State's in serious trouble. And I actually think Indiana might be the best team left on their schedule, not Penn State. So if you lose to Penn State, you might finish the regular season with 3 fucking losses. Damn. $20 million roster. Shout out Ryan Day. But Wisconsin, your season is over. As is Nebraska's, who lost to the aforementioned Ohio State. But Ohio State, boy, y'all tried to give that thing away. Shout out to the Ohio State fans. Y'all got pissed off, and right on cue, you threw a bunch of Texas fans out on the field. We knew this was going to happen. We knew everybody with a YouTube channel, a Twitter account, any type of blog, everybody in every comment section, everybody said it and typed it. After the Texas fans threw a bunch of trash on the field last week, we all said it. Well, it's going to happen again now because the referees have shown that if you do that, you could potentially get the call overturned in your favor. Well, we didn't have to wait long. The noon games yesterday. Ohio State and Nebraska locked in a 1-score game near the end of the game. Nebraska has the ball. They're driving for what would be the go-ahead touchdown. They throw the ball. Receiver gets leveled. Here come the flags. Targeting on Ohio State. It's reviewed and upheld. And right on cue, the Ohio State fans start doing what? Throwing a bunch of Texas fans on the field. Did I say Texas fans? I meant trash. They started throwing a bunch of Texas fans, I mean trash, on the field. Now, it didn't work. Turns out the referees at the Ohio State-Nebraska game aren't a bunch of giant fucking pussies like the SEC had out in Austin last week, who are easily swayed by a bunch of smooth-brained dumbasses who throw shit on the field. So the call stood, but it wasn't enough. Ohio State's defense showed up in the end, stopped Nebraska on that last drive, and Ohio State hung on for a miracle win at home against Nebraska. Same Nebraska team, by the way, that 8 days ago got beat by 40 points by Indiana. Indiana might be what a legitimately good team looks like, Ohio State, man. You might want to Google that. I don't know. All right, and now it gets to the two that I really don't like doing, Navy and Vandy. Let's start with Navy. Nobody roots against Navy and Army. The only time anybody ever roots against Navy or against Army is during the Army-Navy game, and you have a tie to either the Army or the Navy game. In other words, you were in the Army. So you root against Navy in the Army-Navy game. You were in the Navy. So you root against Army in the Army. I completely understand that. I'm talking about your average idiot like me and the majority of y'all watching. We don't wake up Saturday morning going, man, I sure do hope Navy loses today so Lou can do the point and laugh on how funny would it be to have to, grab that Navy helmet, woo. Nobody. I don't want to do it. And I'm only doing it today for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, I don't get very many opportunities to grab the Navy helmet and talk about it, which, by the way, is one of my absolute favorite helmets that I own. I absolutely love this helmet. It's a really, really good looking helmet. And but the nature of what we do here, I don't obviously have anything against Navy, but very rarely does the opportunity present itself where we would be able to talk significantly about Navy on a channel like this. And that time is now. They were undefeated. They were ranked. People were talking about that matchup coming up at the end of the year with them and Army potentially playing twice and maybe one of them going to the playoffs. And the only thing that stands in the way for both of them, ironically enough, is Notre Dame. Navy got their shot yesterday. Army gets their shot in a few weeks. Unfortunately for Navy, it didn't work out. They got destroyed. They got destroyed. I haven't seen... fuck it. I haven't seen Navy take a beating that bad since Pearl Harbor. Oh, I can't believe I said it. I've been thinking for about 12 hours whether or not I should say that joke. There you go. You got you a wireless keyboard. You can start pounding on it. Or drooling into it, too. Navy. Anchors down. Kind of funny. What are we going to do with Vandy? Here's the thing with Vandy. You want to know why I put Vandy? I'll tell you why I put Vandy over here. Couple of reasons. Same thing again. Couple of reasons. Reasons number one. Well, okay, I like the helmet, but reason number one, we don't get an opportunity to talk about Vandy very much on this channel for the same reasons we don't talk that much about Navy. They're generally not a very good team. They're not a good program. They struggle to make bowl games every year, blah, blah, blah. It's no fun to laugh at them. There's not a bunch of Vandy fans on the internet that we can come on here and try to troll. So we don't talk about them very much. So I have an opportunity now, so why not take it and talk about them? Reason number two, a lot of you were wrong. A lot of you were wrong. I don't want to hear, look, I've never seen I've never seen this high a percentage of people pick a significant underdog to win outright as I saw picking Vandy to beat Texas. Those of you that did that don't now get to come on here with, we told you. No, you didn't. You told me Vandy was going to beat them. Dummy. Vandy lost. I mean, they beat Alabama. They beat Virginia Tech. We're past the point of going, Vandy almost won. They lost to this. They lost. So you were wrong. Now, I told you I'm not betting the game, and I didn't bet the game. I wasn't going to bet Texas minus 18. Because I've watched Vandy play and they're pretty good. I wasn't going to bet Vandy plus 18 because Texas is really good. He could have beat them by 3 touchdowns for all I knew was going to. So I just didn't bet the game. And I'll be honest, another reason, and I told y'all this too on the call-in show, another reason I didn't bet Texas minus the points is if it was close in the fourth quarter, I wanted to be able to pull for the upset because that's what people do. It had nothing to do with Texas. Sports fans have been cheering for the underdog since the dawn of sports. When you're watching a game that you're not emotionally tied to, in other words, you're not a fan of either of the two teams, and one of them's a massive underdog, we all love that. That's one of the things about sports. That's a universal truth when it comes to sports, and it doesn't matter what the sport is. Football, basketball, baseball, anything. People are drawn to the underdog story. So I didn't bet the game, so I wasn't wrong. About 90% of you picked Vandy to win that game. Y'all was wrong. Vandy, your season is over. Vandy's a good team for real. Diego Poverty, one of the best. Who's better, Diego Poverty or Alton Gentry? I know they play different positions. I'm just saying, who's better, Diego Poverty or Alton Gentry? Y'all let me know down below. Don't know. Don't care. All right, so there you go. That's it for the teams that lost. The whole year season is over. Point and laugh. Ha, ha, ha. All right, now, here's another thing that made yesterday kind of disappointing from a year season is over video. You know, every week when I do the teams that won good and teams that won bad, and it's funny to talk about the teams that won bad, I don't know if you're able to, let me see if, hold on a second. I'm going to turn the camera around so you can see this. All right, these are my copious notes. Starting at the top, it's teams that won and looked good. Teams that won and looked bad, that's it. So the point is, not only is there not really a lot of funny losses on the year season is over wall, we don't even really get to laugh at a lot of teams for winning that look bad, but we get to laugh at a couple. Ohio State struggle win over a bad Nebraska team. I say bad Nebraska team. By Nebraska standards over the last decade, this is a good Nebraska team. In terms of the overall world of college football, this isn't a very good Nebraska football team. Their best win is Colorado, for fuck's sake. Colorado's going 10-2. we're just going to pretend like we don't know and like we forgot all the shit we said about Colorado. We're just not going to talk about them because they're going 10-2. But Ohio State 21-17, not good. Nebraska had 64 yards. No, Ohio State. Dang. What? Come on, man. Ohio State has 64 yards rushing in this game. Yikes. Second half. Okay, let's see. Second half against Oregon, you had what? 19 yards rushing. Entire game against Nebraska, 64 yards rushing. The two best teams you've played are Oregon and Nebraska. The two most physical teams you've played so far this season are Oregon and Nebraska. And in both games, you can't run the ball, which leads me to believe you're getting pushed around on the lines of scrimmage. A squared plus B squared. Yeah, you're fucking soft. What happened? You had like a stretch some last year into this year where you weren't soft. Now you're soft again? Oh boy. Now you're soft again. Fuck Ohio State. Fuck them right in the pussy. Kansas State beat Kansas by 1 point. Yes. That is still the hill I'm dying on. I am riding with Kansas State in the Big 12. I don't give a fuck about Iowa State being undefeated. I don't give a fuck about BYU being undefeated. I don't care that BYU beat Kansas State already this year by 40 or whatever. Don't care. Don't care that Kansas State only beat a 2-win Kansas team by 1. Don't care. I'm riding with Kansas State to win the Big 12. SMU, same thing, 1 point win over Duke, and I thought SMU would blow them out. They were an 11-point favorite on the road at Duke. It took overtime and a bunch of special teams disasters by Duke for SMU to pull out a miracle 28-27 win in overtime last night against Duke. So that's it for the look bad. The look good, you already know. Pitt over Syracuse, 41-13. Pitt somehow still undefeated. Boise State, 29-24 on the road during the week at UNLV. You can laugh if you want. UNLV only had 1 loss. Boise State had to go on the road during the week, and they beat them 29-24. Alstanian, what does this say? Alstovius Gentworth, 128 yards rushing. That Boise State running back. Yeah. Oregon, 38-9 over Illinois. Penn State, 28-13 over Wisconsin. I put Texas good win. 27-24 over Vandy. Why did I put a 3-point win as a good win when they were favored by like 18? Well, because 95% of you told me they were going to lose. So I'm assuming it's a good win. A lot of you were surprised that Texas won. It's got to be a good win. Miami, 36-14 over a pile of actual shit. Texas A&M, 38-23 over LSU. Just ran away with it, blew them away in the second half. BYU continues to win, 37-24 over Central Florida. Notre Dame, 51-14 over Navy. Indiana with their backup quarterback, 31-17 against Washington. They're 8-0. 8-0. Yep. Bama, 34-0 over Missouri. Might have been the best game they played all year. Now, the first half against Georgia was something to behold, but that, of course, the second half, they were terrible. So in terms of a complete game, start to finish, that might have been the best game Bama's played all year. 34-0 over Mizzou. All right. That's the one that looked good. One that looked bad. We did the point and laugh. It's time to get on to some serious business. It's time to get on to some serious business here. And also in addition to that as well. Who are the best teams I saw play this weekend? Again, it could, in theory, there could be a 1-win team on this list. If I watched them play and they looked really, really good, I put them on this list. Oregon, Bama, Pitt, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, and Indiana. I'm not here to tell you that's the top, 6 teams in the country. You're missing the point if that's what you're getting out of this. Some teams didn't play yesterday, whatever. This isn't a ranking of anything. This is just, I watched a lot of football over this past weekend. The best teams I saw play this weekend, Oregon, Bama, Pitt, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, and Indiana. Heisman list, I've increased it back to 4 people. I don't know how anybody else could even be on the list, never mind potentially win it. Cam Ward, Dylan Gabriel. What the fuck does that say? Hold on, I can't even read my own writing. What does that say? Alvin Gentsmith, running back, Boise State, and Travis Hunter. That's your Heisman list. Josh Pate special tonight. Two teams getting patted on the head tonight. LSU and Texas, even though they won. A lot of people piling on Texas, lost to Georgia, go on the road. A lot of Texas fans are mad. Quinn Ewers this, Quinn Ewers that. Maybe we need to go with Arch. We're not as good as we thought we were. This is what the Texas fans are saying to themselves. Believe me, I've seen it. Don't worry. Juice Poot be on tonight. He's going to tell you how great Texas is. Same with LSU. Everything's still in front of you. Yeah, just beat Bama at home. Just beat Bama at home is all you got to do. The We're Back list. Somehow I left this off last week. My apologies. Not this week, though. No surprise here. Number one in the We're Back rankings. Once again, for those of you who have been in a coma, or maybe you're Miami fans who hadn't been on the internet for 5 years and now you're back because they're good. The We're Back list. In order to be on the We're Back list, the team has to meet some criteria. Number one, they can't have won anything of significance in at least 10 years. To me, significance is winning a conference title or winning a playoff game. Okay, that's that. They have to have a large fan presence on the internet. And they have to spend a ridiculous amount of time every offseason trying to convince people that their team is back. That's what we're working with here. Number one on the list and the closest to actually being back, Miami. Number two, the next closest to actually being back, Notre Dame. Number three, Tennessee. All three of those teams have potential to actually be back this season. The fourth does not, Florida. You'll be on this list maybe for eternity. I don't know. But there you go. Miami 1, Notre Dame 2, Tennessee 3, Florida 4. The reason I have Notre Dame above Tennessee, again, this is a ranking that changes every week. Tennessee didn't play this week. Notre Dame beat an undefeated ranked team. Notre Dame 2, Tennessee 3. That's it. But all three of those teams, Miami, Notre Dame, and Tennessee, could potentially make the playoffs. Or whatever, and get off the list for next year. We'll see. Florida at 4. Okay, now we're going to spend a little bit of time doing Uncle Lou's playoff eliminator. And if I have time, I'm going to put this up on the screen for you to look at as I'm going through it. So I hope I have time to do that because it's a lot to look at. All right, here we go. There are 8 teams with 0 losses. Oregon, Penn State, Miami, Iowa State, BYU, Indiana, Pitt, and Army. 8 teams, 0 losses. Obviously, every one of those teams is still alive for the playoffs. You might think Pitt's going to lose 2 games or lose 1 game and then the ACC title, and you don't think the committee's going to do this or do that. I'm not talking about weird what-if scenarios down the road. I'm talking about we're headed to November. We're headed to week 10. These teams are all still undefeated, either 7-0 or 8-0. They're obviously all still alive for the playoffs. I think we have to be able to agree on that they're at least alive for the playoffs still. 1-loss teams. Do you think any of these teams are eliminated? Do you think any of these teams are eliminated? List of 1-loss teams. There's 13 of them. Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Tennessee, Clemson, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Kansas State, Boise State, SMU, Navy, Liberty, Washington State. I'm going to cross Navy off the list. I'm going to cross Liberty off the list. I'm tempted to cross Washington State off the list. But the rest of these, SMU, still alive. Boise State, Kansas State, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Clemson, Tennessee, Texas, Ohio State, Georgia. All of those teams still alive for the 12-team playoff. Now, before I get to the 2-loss teams, you fucking idiots who somehow think a 12-team playoff is not going to be entertaining and exciting, fun to watch. What in the absolute fuck is wrong with you? I want you to pick any 2 random teams off of this 0-loss and 1-loss list. Any 2. And tell me you wouldn't be interested to watch that game. Pick any 4 and tell me you wouldn't be interested in watching a 4-team tournament. Pick any 12 of these 21 teams. Any 12. And tell me that's not amazing football in December. You're out of your fucking mind. Here's the 2 lost teams. LSU, Bama, Ole Miss, Illinois, Missouri, Syracuse, Duke. I'm crossing Syracuse and Duke off the list. They're not making the playoffs. I'm crossing Missouri off the list. They're not making the playoffs, even if they went out at 10-2. Why? Already told you. They don't have any ranked teams left on their schedule. And the only 2 ranked teams that they have played, not only did they lose to them, they have lost by a combined score of 80-10. So Missouri is off the list. Illinois, they're off the list. There are too many Big Ten teams ahead of them with 0 and 1 loss. I don't technically think a 2-loss Big Ten team is automatically disqualified. Obviously, it's not. But because of the losses Illinois has, and because of the number of Big Ten teams with 0 or 1 losses still, I am crossing Illinois off my playoff list. Ole Miss, Bama, LSU, I'm leaving on the playoff list for now. LSU and Bama play in 2 weeks. One of them will come off the list. Ole Miss plays Georgia in 2 weeks. Ole Miss could come off the list that week. Georgia couldn't. That would just be Georgia's second loss. But Ole Miss could get eliminated here soon. Either LSU or Bama will get eliminated in 2 weeks. That's 28 teams. 12 of those 28 teams are making the playoffs. And if you don't think that 12 of these 28 teams is going to give us interesting, exciting, close, amazing fucking football games in December, you're out of your goddamn mind. You're out of your fucking mind. And I don't understand why you're a college football fan. If you are still at this point beating the drum of the 12-team playoff is no good, the games are going to be boring, they're going to be blowouts. If you think those games are going to be boring, how in the fuck are you a college football fan? And why would any college football fan argue for less football? You can't tell me, we're in week 10. You can't tell me the 4 best teams. You can't. Nobody knows right now. You can't tell me, it's the same 4 teams. There ain't more than 4 teams. Okay, which 4? Which 4? There's 8 undefeated teams. Which 4 are you eliminating? Come on, man. Come on. This is going to be the best December we've ever seen. The best November we've ever seen. Somebody told me yesterday, these games just don't mean as much because even if they lose, they still got a chance to make the playoff. That's why they mean more. You've got 15 games every Saturday from now to the end of the year that are playoff elimination games because there's a 12-team playoff instead of a 4. Used to be by the time you got to November, there was only about 6 or 7 teams you had to watch in order of keeping up with playoff teams. There was only about 6 or 7 teams that had a shot to make the 4-team playoff by the time you got to November. We're in November now. By my count, there's 28 teams still alive to make the playoffs. Georgia plays Florida this week. I don't care how bad Florida is. It's still fun to beat the fuck out of them. Sun Belt Billy. So that'll be good. We'll have fun with that this week. But anyway, that's it. Your season is over for week 9. Appreciate you watching. Have a good morning.